things over there?
Nah, nah.
Nice. I like that. Consistency.
Ironically, because this is where there's so many farmers in Asia, but I guess they don't care.
Yeah, I never knew the whole point of it. I guess it's because of farmers. I didn't know that.
I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know. I think so.
Interesting. Well, today we got a pretty packed um day. Like very it's going to be a productive meeting. I can just go over some of the things we'll be covering today while people are still making their way in. We got. I'll just do a good quick update on mission and vision. We got like a great input from everybody who filled out the form, so thank you. And we got quite a bit to work off of. There is a DAO working group. I'll talk about that in a sec. Coder Dan and I believe is Jesse going to be joining you today for this discussion?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, so you guys will be covering the Aavegotchi Foundation and just going over, I think, legal structure for the DAO. So that'll be, I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Something that we haven't discussed a whole lot, so it'll be interesting to see what you guys have to say.
Yep.
And then we have three big proposals out right now, but they're all kind of trying to address the same thing. So we'll have a conversation around, and we did have this conversation last week around channeling. But Yannick has a kinship proposal. Coder Dan, you have an economic proposal for your channeling. And then there's an alternative Alchemica reduction proposal. So they're all kind of trying to address the same thing. So we can talk about the problem we're trying to address and the three different approaches. And maybe we can come to some sort of a consensus on how the DAO wants to manage how the DAO wants to manage Alchemica emissions. Um, yeah, and then just a quick reminder: these episodes, DAO Sunday meetings, are recorded by Zombie Shepherd, who is now, I guess, some friends were having trouble accessing these episodes on Spotify, but they should all be there. And then I'll quickly also just mention I do a midweek update on everything DAO related. So if you'd like to subscribe to Substack, I do a weekly DAO blog, Aavegotchi DAO Grants blog, and I'll plug that. I'll plug that as well. For those of you who'd like a midweek update, you'll get emailed, so it's kind of cool that way. So that takes care of that. We got Hardcore's Miro board. I'll drop that in as well. Unless he dropped it already. And then we got the Miro board there. And I'll also plug this other Miro board. If you're new to DAOs, you're trying to catch up on what the heck Aavegotchi DAO is and, you know, our roots, where we came, like how we started and where we think we're going. We have a mission and vision Miro board as well here. So you can check that out if you just want to get caught up, get some context on this mission and vision we're trying to hammer out. Which brings me to my first point. We've put together a working group. I think right now there's 7 people in the working group helping to get the mission and vision stuff finalized. And so if you are interested in joining, you just have to just DM me. I'll get you in the group. It's open to anybody, and yeah, that whoever would like to participate and help us with that. I feel like there should be some sort of yeah, okay, awesome. I will do that. Feel like there should be some sort of like a POAP or a badge for doing it, because you know, as going through the mission and vision, trying to figure that out has been not challenging but interesting, at least. You know, like it's not something that you can just quickly type out. It takes some deliberate thought, and there's many different components to consider when you're like trying to put a mission statement together for something like complicated like Aavegotchi DAO. So We'll get to the bottom of it. I think I want to share I just want to share a form here. It's not really a form; it's a checklist of some of the questions that I thought were really interesting that people had submitted. So please check this out. It is another tally form, but it's just a checklist. So just look through the questions there that people have submitted, and if there's specific ones that you really like, I'd like you to just check them off. I'd just like to get your feedback on it and see temperature check from the DAO to see what questions you found really interesting on this form that should be included, and maybe we can figure out if there's any overlap with some of these questions, because I don't want to make this questionnaire that you're gonna have to fill out. I don't want it to be overburdening or make it feel like it's a momentous amount of work to fill out. So we should just focus on the highest value questions, and then narrow it down into first draft statements. So that is the mission and vision working group. Hardcore, please add some material to the working group. Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. Sorry, let me go to my. We have, let's see, for attendance, I know we got Dr. Wagme in the room, got Yannick in the room. Yannick, are you going to be able to come up and discuss the, you can just reply in the chat. Are you going to be able to come up and discuss the channeling stuff later? Yeah, no, Futuristic and I were just messing around on Twitter. Was it Twitter Spaces? I think I tried to improvise a mission statement on No Futuristics Q, but I have no idea. I don't remember. Yeah, it was challenging. But sometimes, like you say, sometimes those moments where you're pressured to come up with a statement, actually, you can come up with some good stuff. I guess we're gonna wait for Jesse to come up before we start talking about the legal structure and stuff. Oh, I there he is. Shine the bat signal.
Yeah, I figured we would go through
Yeah.
all the active proposals on Snapshot and stuff. If you want to do your normal intro with
Yeah.
what's going on, and then we can jump into it if there's time.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I was actually discussing this with Hardcore. I think the 3 proposals we have up right now actually all do with the channeling discussion. So we decided to kind of just keep everything together with the channeling discussion today. Otherwise, yeah, usually I like to do that proposal review. But right now, I think all 3 proposals are, adjust, alter spillover rates, temporary disable channeling, and then implement original kinship mechanics by Yannick. So we will be discussing all 3 of those today.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get into it now, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We can just shuffle things up, and we can definitely have that discussion first. So Hardcore has put together the Miro board for today. Around that, I'll drop that again here one more time. Oh, no, Future, you do remember it. A friendly, community-driven, hybrid social gaming DAO. Something like that. Yeah, exactly. I think that's something I came up with on the spot, but, we'll dial it down. So that's your mirror board there. We will start off by, could we get Yannick up here? I think this is one of your proposals kind of addresses this. We can have you up here, and as well as, I guess we got Coder Dan up here already. So we have 3 proposals that were put out there. Where do I start? We'll start here. So we have all 3 of these proposals are trying to, I guess, address the same thing, and in different ways. And the thing they're trying to address here is the Alchemica emissions that are being produced versus where this Alchemica is going in sinks, And so there's different ways. Some people have suggested turning off the faucet off completely, and have other recommendations around that. There's another proposal that suggests the inflation, adjusting the inflation rate of Alchemica and reducing that by, now the number they've come up with there is 48%. And you can see there, if you're following me on the Miro board, they say, we believe these measures are necessary given current DAO economic conditions, but we're always free as a DAO to change them at a later date in light of new information or more Alchemica things being introduced. And I think this statement is true for all three of these proposals, is that, these measures can be adjusted if we try something and we realize it didn't work, or it's not achieving what we were hoping it to. We can change that. Um, I guess we can start off. Coder Dan, you have a proposal suggesting, um, well, I don't want to paraphrase everything, but temper. Sorry. Yeah, temporarily disable channeling. The alternate economic proposal. Do you want to maybe just give a kind of a overview of your proposal, and disabling Alchemica channeling, but also what else comes along with that if we were to select this option of a complete turning off?
Yeah, sure. On the form, I did mention that I'm not currently planning to take this to a SIGPROP, although I think Jared did already anyway. So it is live out there, but I was not actually planning to put this one out because I did get plenty of feedback from many members of the community saying that they thought it was just too sweeping at this point, and maybe the community just wasn't ready for such a comprehensive solution, and just didn't feel like it was a good time to do that. So um, basically what it does is it would disable alchemical channeling except for one day during the week. Um, could be a Saturday, could also theoretically be individual parcels could choose when they wanted to do that, but that would be a little bit more extra work. But yeah, it'd be one day per week uh, for each parcel, basically, and spillover would be enabled for that channeling. And so that would right away pretty much reduce our emissions from channeling by about 85%. Well, just that alone would do that. But we wouldn't actually get that much reduction because number two, the idea would be to enable some spillover for the reservoirs 24/7, because as we do know that the parcels have a limited number of alchemica compared to alchemical channeling, which is unlimited. So I do feel like if it could be a time where we could start giving parcel owners all the alchemica that they have under their parcel instead of locking it up in spillover. Which, by the way, that spillover at some point in the future, we can have a discussion on what to do with that, and that'll probably be a separate discussion. But it is all, we could audit it on chain and tell exactly how much spillover has been locked up for harvesters and reservoirs versus how much has been locked up from channeling. So I kind of view those a little bit different. They're not the same alchemica. One is limited, one is unlimited. So that's kind of a separate point. But yeah, number two would enable reservoir spillover 24/7. So landowners would be getting a little bit of a boost there. And for individuals that did plan to play the channeling game and play it hard, we would allow a refund for demolishing the altars because their strategy might change after this proposal was put out. And I do feel in the Web3 gamified gaming space, when we do make these like sweeping changes, it's best if we can try and plan for situations where players might just be really, really unhappy with the results of the tinkering that we're doing as a community, and which is very necessary. I do feel that we're not going to get anything right the first time, and economies always are constantly needed to be tinkered. So with big changes, it's nice to include a little bit of a cushion for those who might be affected. And so that would be part three, and then part four, because high kinship is one of the uh, main like yield areas for for gotchis. Uh, those who have purchased high kinship gotchis or have high kinship gotchis and made that as one of their core strategies would also kind of be feeling the pain here. So we would try and figure out a way where we can enable some gameplay advantages for the high kinship gotchis. So those are kind of the four areas of the proposal. And I see some questions here like, what about bots? Um, we won't really know until we turn things back on, but we did just recently implement a new API, the Jigger, that helps us catch bots and bot daddies. And I think it's got a seems like we're getting currently about 1 to 2% of all the active users are getting flagged. I expect that would go up a lot if we actually did turn up spillover. So we won't really know until we turn it back on, but the cartridge contracts are also pretty much complete at this point. We're really just waiting to implement them and have, as our team is really, really busy with all the combat. So we really haven't focused too much on that, but could definitely be part of this proposal if it were enacted. But it would take some time to set that up. So yeah, that's a general summary. And again, I'm not planning to bring this to the SIGPROC because um, Mark's proposal, my main concerns were that the level 9s were not really being nerfed at all. I thought that was very unfair. And so I gave him some feedback and the community gave him feedback and he did adjust those numbers. So now it's just a blanket 50% reduction basically for all alters. And so I felt that was a little bit more fair to the community. And I'm curious to see how, when that is passed, how it will affect things and what the outcomes will be. So looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah. An interesting thing when we were looking at these proposals briefly last week was something we mentioned, or someone had mentioned, that we should be deliberate with what we're trying to accomplish, and we shouldn't do anything that's like a half measure that, it may or may not work. We should try and see the best possible outcome for what could work, and then make necessary changes. So I think something someone had mentioned was the inflation reduction wasn't enough, and so 48% is definitely a lot more. I think it was like 36% or something, the last time around with that, without nerfing the level 9s. So across the board, it seems like it makes a bigger impact. You can see here on the mirror board, these are the new proposed amounts for each altar level with the current spillover and the proposed spillover. So with this new proposal, your level 1, 2, 3 altars, even 4 or 5. Once you get up to level 5, you start significantly reducing your spillover. It's 10% every time. So I guess once you get to level 9, you're only at 20% spillover. But this should, I guess what we're trying to achieve here is to get people to, I guess in a way, incentivize upgrading your altar, but also addressing the inflation. I'm just trying to think about this. If
Well, the easiest way would have been to just reduce the base rate for alchemical channeling and basically cut it 50%. But seems like there was quite a few arguments against that. So that was the easiest way. But if that is not on the table, this is another. Mark's way was another way of doing that in a similar way, while kind of uh, having that be a little bit more palatable to the voters.
Yeah, I see. I kind of actually, we were talking about this one of these our weekend shows, or I think it was a on GMI, how people may react to this specific proposal. Instead of upgrading their altar, they may potentially, Mikey J makes a good point, not bother to channel at all, uh, rather than upgrade the altar. Just be the 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 proposal there to upgrade to level 5 or 6 even to keep 50% might not appeal to a lot of people given the, I guess, upfront cost to get there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I feel, I actually was kind of this proposal appealed to me before, but after our whole discussion, it seems like maybe turning it off, even if it was you mentioned a 3 month period for your idea there to test it out. I feel like that would give us a good idea of how a more farming based approach would would change some of the emission rates if we were to focus mainly on farming, which is I think what your proposal in a way kind of incentivizes is more building up your farm and increasing your spillover through your reservoirs or collecting your spillover through your reservoirs, as opposed to, in a way, kind of disincentivizing channeling. So we would, if we were to implement your proposal, for example, we would really see what it looks like with no channeling in the Gotchiverse, and we would get. I think that would be a great data point, in my opinion, to even if it was for a temporary period. You say
Mm-hmm.
3 months, it would give us some valuable data. I think as to how deeply does the channeling emission affect the overall the overall emissions being from Alchemica being produced.
And to be clear, I chatted with Mark, and he also said he really liked. Basically, he started out at the same place that I did with his proposal, but got lots of feedback from many community members that they would just not be voting for such an option at this time, and so um, his proposal is kind of a compromise on that side.
Yeah, interesting.
Basically, I mean, what we want to do is reduce the emissions significantly so that we can get sources and sinks back closer to equilibrium when where they are right now. Because right now, obviously, we don't have a ton of sinks. We do have combat coming very soon, but while we're waiting for that, in the meantime, the difference between sources and sinks is just quite large. And as I've said before, we were planning to have farming be a significant source of sinks at the beginning, until we get more advanced things like combat. So that really hasn't panned out as much, just because I it seems to me like the channeling has just kind of overshadowed the alchemica generated from farming, which has disincentivized people to set up farms, which are kind of a longer term yield.
I'm just reading some of the comments here coming through.
And like I said before, the easiest solution would just be to nerf the Alchemica rates 50% across the board for everyone. Would affect everyone equally. But there was I think one of my initial proposals did go over that, and there's quite a few responses to that.
Yeah, the third proposal, which we haven't touched on yet, is Yannick's proposal, or his view. I'm gonna get him up here as well, and have him kind of touch on the kinship aspect that he's discussed. GM,
Good evening.
good evening.
I agree with you guys. We inflated Alchemica too much, and it's definitely not working as intended. And my proposal is not to change hard numbers. Please don't change hard numbers. Change dynamics. Otherwise, if we change hard numbers, if we okay, if you can say you can do it like for 3 months, just to maybe slow down, just to tip the balance. Okay, that's fine, but it will be hard. For example, if you disable Alchemica, go with your proposal for disabling other than how it will be same pushback to turn it on, because it will inflate it it will make another gameplay more beneficial. Same goes with altars. Can you do it my question is, can you do altars for 3 months and turn it on, or you want to do it like forever? Can you clarify this, somebody?
I don't know if Mark is on the call. Let's see if he is or not. There's nothing in the language of his proposal about this being a limited time. So I would assume that if the altar spillovers were changed, that would be more of a permanent change.
But it's huge change if it's permanent.
Yeah, it did mention. I think I see Hardcore has put it on the template. It says temporary measure open to revisit. So was that mentioned somewhere in a forum thread, or it does say it on his template that he made, but it doesn't specify months or how much time that would be.
He did say that we always free as a DAO to change them at a later date in live information. So, and that goes with a lot of these mechanics that we have at our disposal as a DAO to change and work with. We have quite a few levers that are at our disposal.
Also, my insight, as more think about it, about this problem, I think we should do not hard numbers, not say a channeling is somehow hard number, but to do more connected to some other variables in Gotchiverse. If we can, for example, connect it to craft amount, that would be amazing. But I'm not aware if such thing is even possible technically.
Well, we did discuss one of the initial proposals was to basically bring the channeling rewards down to a level where they would be equivalent to how much Alchemica is being generated from farming. And so they would, like for right now, like for example, Keck farming is the ratio of Keck farming that's being generated per day versus channeling per day is much higher than that of FOMO. There's a lot more harvesters harvesting FOMO than there is Keck at the moment. So the ratios there are actually quite skewed.
Sorry, my question was a bit different. Like, can you, I put it into very specific example. Can you take Keck amount farmed from farms and divide it by Keck amount farmed from channeling and have some kind of ratio, let's call it toxicity, and use this ratio in kinship formula, in channeling formula? Is it possible technically?
Not really, because those aggregate amounts are not stored on chain in a way that the smart contract could read them. So we would have to update that manually, which is what the original proposal was kind of planning to do that. It would be like a 2-week revision period or something that would, we would essentially look at the ratio every period and then adjust it up to that. Kind of like with Bitcoin and the difficulty, except that's done on chain.
I mean,
Okay.
you mentioned, Coder Dan, last weekend we were talking about all this stuff, and then you said, what are we trying to really achieve here? We're not, we're trying to control how much Alchemica is being produced, but are we trying to control the price of Alchemica? I don't think that's the goal here, right?
That's not the goal at all.
Yeah.
Because price is something that is like it's market driven, and one of the factors obviously is supply and demand, and so price will be affected by this. But to try and say, oh, we're trying to raise the price of Alchemica or lower the price of Alchemica is out of the scope of this conversation, in my opinion. What we're trying to do is just have a balanced game economy. So if you think of our economy as like a company, you would see, well, we have a lot of we're printing a lot of money, but we're not actually using a lot of that money at this point. So what we're trying to do is have the printing and the using be a little bit more closely in equilibrium.
See, I like some of the components here that Yannick's proposing. And, you know, this idea of having to choose between one activity and the other. You know, there's an opportunity cost or a strategy that has to be implemented. You know, if you're going to be considering losing some kinship off the gotchi versus, you know, channeling and taking the yield, and then having the farming available as well as an alternative. You know, if the channeling's not appealing, you want to save kinship, then maybe you're going to gravitate more towards farming. And having this, you know, I like the idea of changing dynamics, and adding strategy to things, but then it's not quite precise, which is kind of the trouble. Be hard to, you know, track changes, and I guess you just have to do a trial period and see how things get affected. That would be the easiest way. But what Mark's proposing is more precise. It's saying, okay, we'll cut it exactly by 48% based on the current activity. So there's like numbers there. Whereas, yeah, Yannick's proposal is more strategy based. And then, you know,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Just one note here. There is huge disadvantage of using raw numbers because you never know. It's like 100 or 1,000 variables because each person will make a separate decision. So we should avoid like just putting raw numbers because it's like put a lot of weight in one side of boat, and then you need to put some weight in another side of boat, and you just balancing it out. And in I would propose if we do some changes, if we do economical changes, we change dynamics, we change economical dynamics. And see how it, if it goes right direction, maybe we change it a little bit for more, maybe change formal a little bit more. But I would really suggest to don't change like prices or raw numbers.
Well, I think the proposal you're exploring is a dynamic, and
Yes. So
I am worried. Like I said, I think last week that your proposal would actually incentivize people to want more rarity farming seasons, because otherwise their kinship that they're not spending they would feel like they're not utilizing it, whereas other people are spending the kinship. So those who are kind of hoarding kinship would be trying to have more rarity farming seasons. So that's one of my main critiques of that. It could become an issue like we had with friends inflation.
I agree because it's in a way you are tanking with your war chest with this future rarity farming reward. You're
Yes.
promising it to. I agree.
Exactly.
This is an issue.
Yeah, that's probably my main worry about your proposal. We already experienced the future, kind of, we call it the debt, promising future rewards based on current things, and I think it works for a while, but it does get to a point where it becomes harder and harder to sustain those promises.
Interesting. What about, I'm just reading point 4 of your proposal, Coder Dan, your idea there, which states boost movement speed and hit points for high kinship gotchis, since high kinship is tied to alchemical channeling yield.
Right.
I mean, I'm wondering if there's a way to somehow integrate that with what Yannick is suggesting and say, well, you know, you could sacrifice 4 kinship points to channel, but your gachi will, over time, if you keep channeling it, is gonna, it's gonna slow down, and your hit points are gonna go down. And that would be a trade off to, I guess, an additional trade off to channeling. But now that further, I guess, I don't know, that might be too much of a stick for that, because now you're saying you'll lose 4 kinship points, your gachi will get slower, and you'll lose hit points. That maybe is almost completely um, gonna more disincentivize someone to channel. But maybe that's what we're trying to accomplish, right? This is what Yannick's trying to say is, with changing the dynamics, you can maybe influence player behavior rather than adjust the numbers.
Unless if we can find a solution where the Gachiverse does boost some trait based on kinship, then that would definitely help ease the pressure. But I do see a scenario 3 to 6 months down the line where people who have been hoarding kinship are gonna be lobbying for more allocation in rarity farming or more rarity farming seasons because they feel like their kinship is underutilized. And that's the dynamic that we're working with right here. That's just to make it clear to everyone. We're basically making people choose between earning their yield now from kinship or earning a potential future yield on a future rarity farming season.
I'm reading some of the comments here. Mark says, Yannick's proposal solves the infinite UBI forever problem and, could be a long-term solution. Mine is a shorter-term solution to get us through till combat and more sinks are available. It also incentivizes more investment. At the very least, people will go to level 2, which costs, maybe a dollar or a couple dollars or something. So I guess what Mark is proposing here with the new inflation numbers is hopefully enough to get us to combat, where we hopefully will have more sinks and maybe a new dynamic in the game, and then we can look at this again. Am I wrong there, Mark? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what you're trying to say, right? Yeah. Okay.
Somebody is worried. Somebody in the chat is worried that most people already have like 1,000 plus kinship, and my proposal would simply make them farm for the next few months and simply sell into the market and be in good position. Yeah, that is a relevant point. And so what we can do, we can, for example, say we can acknowledge that we inflated UBI too much, and say, for example, for the next quarter, channeling cost not 4 but 6. So this will not only like change the dynamic, but kind of like even more reverse what we did wrong. Well, not what we did wrong, but what market showed us, the flaw of our model. So that would be an option.
Do you think that the 1,000 plus kinship gachis are going to actually, like, do you have a lot of 1,000 kinship gachis, I think. Are you going to spend 6 kinship to get alchemical channeling, or would you prefer to keep petting every day and continue increasing your lead in the kinship leaderboard?
I don't have a lot of 1,000 plus because I was most time I was petted with my hands in cold storage. I have maybe like I don't know, 50, maybe like 5%. What I would do, I would separate them. Some for characters which I want to build, which I want to be more like PvP, have more badges for rarity farm. I would leave them to farm kinship there because it will be like, from my perspective, it's better. And for characters which will be like more farmers, I will use it to collect alchemica. So that will be my personal strategy. Maybe the percentage would be like 60 to 40 or 70 to 30. I can analyze and tell you afterwards.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like how you would plan to manage your stable.
Yeah, something I discussed there with Yannick is possibly doing some, I don't know, maybe see what you guys think, but doing some sort of a modeling around kinship if we were to play around with the numbers and, come up with some scenarios and have actually look at how this may, um, different adjustments with the kinship, how it may actually affect the emissions, because that's not really, well, I guess you wouldn't really know till you implemented it because it's a player based dynamic. But Dr. Wagme has an interesting point. This is not a popular take with kin whales, but perhaps the rarity farming kin leaderboard could reflect kin spent instead of kin earned. That's interesting. Reading the comments, Mikey J says no half measures, just pause channeling altogether until there are more use cases for Alchemica. Same argument as spillover. Okay. Okay. So like what's the best way to move forward with this? It sounds like we're going to have to try something, right? Like let's look at the what is it looking like so far with voting? So we have adjust alter spillover rates. We have change to proposed alter rates, 8.3 out of 9 million quorum, and 63% say do it, 36% saying do nothing. That's for that's for adjusting the spillover rates. Temporary disable channeling altogether as at 5.5 million out of 9, and 62% saying do proposals 1, 2, and 3 instead. That one's leading. And then Yannick's proposal, 4.8 out of 9 million quorum, 69% saying implement original kinship mechanics that we discussed before Gotchi versus launch. I like that idea, Jesse. It'd be nice to see as many proposals side by side, TLDR style, where we could all signal and rank them. Yeah, I think that'd be great. We could, I'll talk to Hardcore about it. See if we can make that at some integrate that into Miro, and yeah, that would be great. Dr. Wagme saying he would reduce his channeling to 40 gotchis instead of 165. Oh, crypto.
I mean, they are kind of on snapshot already, right? The three of them. One is a sig prop, well, two. One is a core prop. The other two are currently sig props. It's just Jared is will, if it passes, it would replace Mark's proposal.
Yeah, we have Crypto Gotchi up here. Welcome.
Sorry, just one more note.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm not, just to finalize this. Sorry, CryptoGotchi, don't mean to cut you. Just to the point on voting. There is one issue because I cannot vote with, like, the question is everything that voted must be implemented, or there is room for like DAO discussion, because we are DAO and not everything must be on chain, because there is an issue. I cannot vote with like 80,000 of my coins because of some issue. 80,000. So efficiently, like I would support, of course, I would support mine and vote against the proposal I don't think would help. So how is it? Can we discuss it? Like, can I use my? Can we take it into the account, and I will have like I will change. I'll fix it in the next few days, so I can vote.
Yeah, I mean, if it does reach quorum, you can request some changes as long as they're not significant changes that would make us go back to the drawing board with a sig prop. We do allow a little bit of flexibility for sig props to be upgraded into core props, but it shouldn't be too much because otherwise you might as well just resubmit it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Cryptogotchi, go ahead.
No worries at all. Is my sound okay?
Yeah, you
Yep,
sound
hey,
great.
Ren.
Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about this kinship channeling dynamic because the criticism from Coder Dan that this might or will increase pressure to have more rarity farming is a valid one, but I think there are more things to consider here because for a long time people have, well, some people have tried to reduce kinship rarity farming rewards, or were generally unsatisfied because there is no much change, especially since everyone started using bots. So until the bots fail, there is really no change in the ranking. And I think that's what's really great about Yannick's proposal, because it has the potential, and at this point is really just the potential to shake things up. And whether or not this potential is realized depends on exactly that question that we had a moment ago. Will people with higher kinship actually channel? And this is of course different for everyone. Everyone makes their own decisions. But overall, as an average, I think it's very important question, and we should create incentives to balance this. So right now, the formula for channeling, for example, uses the square root. So basically, top 1 kinship gotchi gets barely any more alchemica than a top 1,000 kinship gotchi. And if you want to have a universal basic income and no burn mechanic, this is great. This is really nice. So I understand that we started out with that. But now that we are basically integrating channeling into the kinship leaderboard, we have to pivot to a more competitive style where actually higher kinship gotchis would get a lot more alchemica compared to lower kinship gotchis. Overall, we of course keep in mind that we want to decrease overall emissions, but we can do that and still give proportionally more proportionally more alchemica to higher kinship gotchis. And this would give people an incentive to channel with their higher kinship gotchis. And before I stop, there's one more point that I wanted to make. Me personally, I have some higher kinship gotchis, and no matter what we do, I would never channel with any of them if it means I will reduce my kinship, even if we don't do any more rarity farmings, because just like being at that leaderboard gives me gratification. And I think that might be the same for some other people who are really looking forward to climb, because some people might prefer just to channel and get the monetary value out of it instead of staying in the kinship game and climbing the ladder.
And so, in short, I guess, what you're saying here is actually further incentivizing the gotchis with high kinship. Is that what you're saying? So if you have a high kinship gotchi channeling, you would be receiving more alchemica, and if you were a lower kinship, you'd be receiving a lot less than you do now. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's basically what I suggest, but not right now. Right now, we are missing the numbers. What I would like to see is, a bit of killing the UBI, or at least altering the UBI to the point where it's more about this competitiveness. Yeah. And sorry, one more thing. What I wanted to say is that right now we are missing the data of how to really adjust it in a way that it's balanced and that it makes sense. So personally, I think that if Yannick's proposal reaches quorum, that we should implement that, and maybe also Mark's if it passes the core, of course, and then see how those two proposals change the channeling behavior, and then we can collect data for a couple weeks how the behavior has changed, and then we have the knowledge to come up with a different formula for channeling that then, as you summarized it, has the effect to create much more alchemica by channeling with higher kinship gotchis than with lower kinship gotchis. But the exact number, how much, we would want more data on to be able to balance this correctly.
Yeah, interesting. Just reading some of the questions and comments here. Tommy Gotchi had asked, "Is there an issue with users that are channeling and using Alchemica to upgrade installations? If not, then in his opinion, it's a game dynamic issue and not a supply issue, pointing out to shift to game dynamic change, not hard cut approach." And then, yeah, Mikey J's comment as well. "I think everyone agrees with this, but it seems like there's not a willingness to wait for more game elements to come online to help solve the problems." So we have some long-term, solutions, I think, that could help with balancing the economy over the long term. I guess then the question becomes, what do we want to do in the short term? If we're just talking short term, right? Let's say arena battle stuff and actual full like additional game mechanics and syncs are, let's say, 3 or 4 months out. Which of these proposals or which combination of proposals do we think would be most appropriate in the short term, even if we're thinking it's even if we don't get it right, we can always go back and change, but in the intermediate, like this time between now and when we get that release, what do we think is like the most appropriate action to take? Could be a combination of these solutions people have presented, or could be just simply one of these proposals we implement and see what changes happen. And there's even people that have mentioned natural market dynamics of, hey, you know what, when channeling becomes so unprofitable, people will just simply stop channeling till it becomes appealing again, and let the natural market dynamics, like when channeling, when the cost of channeling is higher than the gas fee, I typically just stop channeling till I'm able to actually till I'm not burning more matic than what it costs to channel. But that's just me. I guess everybody has a different approach to that. Yeah, people sharing their different approaches. Yeah, Coder Dan, what's your take on this? Like this, we've had many different suggestions here during this conversation. Um, in my mind, I think we should be asking ourselves, what are we trying to accomplish here in the short term before we get the next major changes to the game, which might again shift the dynamics in how people are either spending Alchemica or producing Alchemica.
I mean, I think I've said my part on it
Yeah.
a couple times. And now there are 3 proposals currently on Snapshot, and one has been upgraded to a core proposal because it reached quorum with a significant amount of voting power, 15 million out of 9 million, with 12 million ghosts, 75% for change to the proposed alter rates. So that seems to be at the moment the will of the DAO as far as that. And Yannick's proposal is about halfway to quorum, and currently it looks like Jared's replace Agip 49 is 5.6 million quorum, but it's going to the winner currently is continue with outcome of Agip 49. So I mean, I think there's the DAO is already voting on which ones are it would prefer to implement. I mean, we're not going to do any vetoes of the DAO. These are all legal actions that you guys are voting on. So we'll have to live with the changes that are made, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think
I mean,
that
we're all very new to this. Everyone's experimenting with Web3 gaming. It's very, very tough industry to be in. But this is why we're on the frontier of Web3 gaming here. Having a DAO making these decisions is much better, in my opinion, than having a company top down making these decisions.
yeah, absolutely.
Tefe, do you think we could go to the next topic here? Because
Yeah,
Jesse's
absolutely.
going to have to jump off here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. We should shift gears and we should get into the presentation you yourself and Jesse have put together, and we can revisit this next week. I also agree with Dr. Wagme's points there on how we should move forward with this. So yeah, let's get Jesse up here. Or I don't see him in the room. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah. Oh, there we go. GM.
Mike. Hey, good morning.
Am I okay? Am I okay to share that Word doc that you sent to me, or is that for your presentation?
Yeah, we'll drop it in a minute.
Okay.
I think before we get everybody reading it together, it's a wall of text.
Okay,
We can try
okay.
to outline what we're talking about, and then by all means, everybody should jump in and go through it with us. So, yeah, first of all, great to be here on the DAO call. It's been a while since I've joined one. I try not to stretch myself too thin and get involved in the DAO side. Try to stay over in Pixelcraft land as much as I can, but in this particular case, one thing that we have been working on, especially Dan and myself, is exploring ways to get the DAO on solid legal footing and just a solid foundation for the long term, and hand over more power ultimately to the DAO on our quest for further decentralization and getting out of the cocoon and into the next stage of Aavegotchi DAO. So this is something we can share our latest basically news from our conversations with various legal, and it hasn't been like a really straightforward journey. It's been frustrating at times, but we're finally at a point where we're pretty excited with where we might be able to go if the DAO so is inclined. If you guys are so inclined, we have a pretty decent Aavegotchi DAO Foundation proposal here to share today. Dan, if you have anything to add, otherwise we can drop the
No.
doc and we can all read along.
Sure, go for it.
All right. So I don't know. I think it's been a while. We did raise the idea of Panama at some point, and there were a couple aspects with the Panama jurisdiction that we did not like. Without wasting a lot of time on it, you may recall some of us talked about this idea of a protector, and Yeah, that had a lot of problems. Namely, everything in Panama has a protector that basically is like super OP. It no matter how many directors you have, no matter how it's set up otherwise, the protector is basically like there to squash everything else if it feels its need. So it kind of like kills the whole purpose of a DAO, and just did not make a lot of sense. So continued our journey, looking around, getting various advice, and we've got some really strong legal now that's very familiar with other top DAOs in the space like ENS and Sushi, and has worked closely with some of them. So I feel like this is sound legal advice with experience. And if we take a look here at the doc that Coder just dropped, basically this is a proposal for an entity. Legal has suggested a Cayman Offshore Foundation with a board consisting of 9 directors who are also the multi-sig signers of the DAO Treasury. 3 of these directors would also serve as the administrative officers. So, when you think of a foundation, you usually have a president, a secretary, things like that. That would be the officer roles. Someone would need to fill those. What this would do is the DAO Treasury is currently held by our Pixelcraft multisig, and we need to change that. So all funds present and future would be transferred to the board multisig described below. And this would also mean the Ghost Bonding Curve Council tokens could potentially also be transferred to the multisig. And eventually, all protocol contracts could be owned by this multisig, or if that's too much risk, it could be owned by the DAO itself via on-chain voting, with the board acting as a last resort guardian to prevent malicious transactions. This is very similar to Aave and how they do theirs. So, long story short, this is a huge step in the process to get everything into the DAO's hands. And so, to make it a reality, though, we have to decide if we can actually fill the board with competent leaders and at the same time not compromise any decentralization. I think this achieves that. So, Dan, am I missing anything? Should we go to the board? You want to walk us through that?
Yeah. So the board. I'm sorry, I was just reading the chat here, and we are on the next topic, guys. So let's keep it to the foundation proposal here. So we have 9 for the board. Is basically there is the option to do the board as the multi-sig would be separate from the board, because legally on Cayman Islands they only require 3 board members basically, which are also the officers below the president, secretary, and treasurer. But we believe it's cleaner and simpler to have the board also be the 9 multi-sig signers that would represent Aavegotchi DAO and signing and kind of holding the treasury. So for the board, they would be 9 doxed like KYC directors, and this is because your name is going to be on the Cayman Islands books and would need to be also known by us just for AML regulations. And likely, I believe, there is plenty of precedent for this being a paid position. We did discuss with the legal, they're very familiar with what other DAOs are doing. And so for similar positions, they're paying up to 5 to 10K USD per year for being a signer or being on the board of one of these DAO multisigs. And they also did suggest that if you're going to be on the multisig, you should probably have your own S corp or like your own entity, just for maximum legal protection in this kind of regulatory space. And so the board does not represent the DAO in that it can make decisions on behalf of the DAO. The board is really just the executor of what the DAO wants to do. So the board can't tell the DAO what proposal they're going to be voting on. It goes one way, because the DAO is, if you imagine like a hierarchy, the DAO is on the top, and then you have the board, which is directors, and then below the board you have the officers, which are actually doing the work, which we'll get to in a second. And so if if you as an individual director didn't agree with a decision that the DAO was making, you could resign. Typically, that would be if they wanted to do something illegal. But
yeah, basically, if you felt it's all in the Constitution. Like they are really powerless. They are just enforcing whatever is recognized as the will of the DAO. So if that's sig props and core props, then that's what they're going to execute on, and all of that can be put into the Constitution. And like Dan said, if you feel like, oh well, this is risky or this is not appropriate, you can always resign and disavow yourself. But you cannot advocate and vote against the DAO. That's something that you're not able to do. So if hopefully some people here on this call are the ones that would be most qualified to consider this position, assuming if this gets voted to go through, candidates should be upstanding members of Aavegotchi DAO with good reputations, of course. But more than that, I mean, we talked about this a lot, and it's pretty important because we are a protocol that I think at least a majority of people on this as directors and especially as officers should be familiar with smart contract interactions. Now, Dan, you were saying that doesn't mean necessarily like they have to write smart contracts. We don't need a Solidity team running this, but we do need people that have a hardware wallet, know how to use it, are familiar with creating transactions on like Gnosis safe, things like that, because that's
maybe there's like there could be a new contract or one that's doesn't have a clean UI. You might need to chuck the ABI in there and like make a custom transaction. That's pretty much as difficult or as complex as we're talking here. You wouldn't need to write a smart contract to do something.
Yeah, and I see the chart just shared by Dr. Wagme. We had that pulled up during the calls with legal. I think there's some significant differences, but it's not like it's definitely helpful. Like it shows basically. Let me enlarge it. The DAO Executive Committee is basically your board and your directors, and then the Executive Committee chair is basically your three that are in the administrative positions as officers. So if you're in the doc with us, you see the next section is the officers, and these are the three official positions in the Cayman entity. Ideally, 3 members of the board would undertake these positions. So 3 of the 9 also happen to serve as president, secretary, and treasurer. These are also paid roles with compensation to be discussed. And just real quick, the reason you have these is like for the treasurer, they would have some actual like hours to put in terms of just this role outside of anything else they're doing with the DAO. They may be advocating for proposals and calls like this and have their own initiatives they're funding, but strictly limited to this role as officer, the treasurer is probably going to be pulling some hours doing, treasury type stuff. Accounting would be a nice background. Somebody who's run their own small business or something along those lines, knows how to balance a checkbook, that kind of thing. That would be the best person for treasurer. And then secretary is the type of person that usually does a lot of actually signing off on documents. So the president and the secretary are usually, it's either one of those that are doing signatures with basically anything off chain, whether you're signing with documents to form the foundation or to renew things at the end of years or subscriptions. Those are all that off chain activity has to be signed by somebody. And so that's your president and secretary. And so roughly that's the role those 3 have to play. And and so that's basically the idea. And then we get to this roadmap part, which shows how quickly we could move on this if we want to get this done. Legal was adamant that, they also have busy schedules, but they're like, if you want to move fast, we can get this done before the holidays hit. And so with that in mind, what you see on this roadmap is just, as soon as the first part of this week, we could do a forum post plus SIGPROP, basically doing 2 things, saying, do we want to do this? And if we do, also it's time for you to put your names in the hat if you want to be one of the directors or officers, and you can indicate so. And then so we let that go a week, and then by the 21st of this month, we could already be at the core prop, assuming it passes. We'd be at a core prop with elections of everybody who put their name in the hat, and then we're actually on track to be forming the foundation by the first week of December. With the directors confirmed, we get those to legal, they start the process, and by middle of December, the foundation officially launches with its 9 directors and 3 officers. As soon as that's done and the ink dries, we can set up the multi-sig and transfer everything to the foundation multi-sig. And then as you can see in the roadmap, the reason, once all this is done, it empowers us to do bigger things. And that's why we put for Q2 of next year, the actual diamond contracts could transfer to the foundation. So, so that's kind of what could be, if that's what we want it to be. And the benefits of this legal entity are many things, but 2 would be the legal separation of Pixelcraft Studios with the DAO. As some of you know, some prior legal advice, there's this theory of safe harbor. And basically it's precedent as a 3-year window for gradual decentralization. That's what our whole original DAO roadmap was built on, if you go back to the Medium articles. And so we're coming into the 2nd year here, and we've done a good job. We've seen a lot of decentralization and task forces, but there's still some of those key elements of control that need to be decentralized. And having this set up will make that much, much more viable and able to do it in a legal way. The other part is the board can execute proposals on behalf of the DAO. So there's certain things that have even passed as core props that have been unable to be executed yet. I think there's like a 3 million ghost staking proposal, other liquidity provisions for things like Alchemica, even funding D-Work or DTF or any other task force or initiative. That's all going to be able to be done in a very legit way now, because the board is on good standing to move any sum of funds as long as it makes sense to do so. So I'm going to catch up on reading here in the DAO meetings channel, text channel. Dan, did you see any big questions to address?
Yeah, it's, I mean, the obvious one is there legal risk for being on this board, especially as an American, as many of our community members are American? And it's always a gray area. And like Mikey said, it is good if you have your own legal counsel. This would be a great thing to discuss with them if you're planning to be on the board. And then is the compensation of 10K a year adequate for the amount of perceived risk? The answer is, really no one knows, because there haven't really been a lot of situations where multi-sig signers have been investigated or has had legal action brought against them. We did confirm with this legal that there are other DAOs doing quite similar setups, and they're quite large DAOs, and they have a similar risk profile and a similar compensation. So it is fairly seems to be quite standard. But every DAO is different, every community is different, and I just opened the doc for commenting if you'd like to comment on some areas, and we can always go back to legal and continue discussing with them more. If we feel that 10K is not enough for the risk, definitely is an area that could be discussed. And we're just kind of presenting you guys with this is not like an official proposal. It's just, here's what we believe is a way that we can move forward as a DAO, as a community, and have a legal entity set up. So there's details that still need to be filled in for sure.
Yeah, this is basically we're at a point now where we actually have something that is kind of relatively complete and presentable and worth sharing. So,
I did want to mention, so above we mentioned the org chart that Dr. Wagme made. And so that org chart, the emphasis on that was more on active roles in the executive committee chair. So there was like the HR lead, finance lead, ops lead, communications, product, technology, etc. Where like we were going back and forth about, well, should these leads be also the officers? And the cleanest way to do it, I think, is that those leads would be they would not be specifically part of this organization, because those are kind of officers elected by the DAO to do a specific role. whereas the officers in this proposal are the Cayman Island of like roles that are legally required from a company to have: president, secretary, treasurer. So I mean, there is a possibility that those could overlap. For example, the president maybe could be the operations lead or communications lead. Secretary could maybe be something like the HR lead or operations lead. Treasurer could maybe be the finance lead, but that is definitely not required by the Cayman side. It would be extra on our side, and those would probably also require additional compensation, because we're not. Well, if I think in the doc here, we didn't give a specific amount that would be for the officers. Those would need to be discussed, but we were thinking something similar in the ballpark of the board, maybe a little bit higher than the board, because there will be extra work required that actually you'll have to interface with Cayman or interface more with the DAO in terms of like a treasury report and things like that. But it wouldn't be like a full-time job, I guess. And so if we want it to be a full-time job, that would be a separate conversation, I think. But
Yeah,
it's
I think
definitely related.
it's very important to not muddy the waters on this and see each role as not mutually exclusive to other things you may be doing in the DAO that require further responsibilities, or like in this case, especially for the board, the directors, you're pretty much, signing multi-sigs on behalf of things, core props, when they pass, relatively speaking, and need to be able to understand and work within that realm. And then the officers a little bit more. That's like I say, you're going to be putting in maybe it's a part-time job. Maybe you're doing 20 hours a week, and sometimes more, sometimes less. So it's a little bit different there. But I don't think it's mutually exclusive. If there's other initiatives or projects you take on under D work or through DTF or whatever other entities are out there, they all are kind of satellites to this. This is strictly, the scope here is just to maintain the foundation on behalf of the greater DAO, if that makes sense. And then I think it makes a little more sense why I saw somebody say, well, 10K to be a board member. And it's like, well, yeah, you're not doing too much here if you're, but you are, all you have to really do is be reliable, like not disappear and be able to sign and act on behalf of what the DAO asks for. But yeah, open for questions, feedback. Like I say, we're sharing what we're learning.
This is a big step for the DAO. I mean, this is something we really wanted to do, but there's so many ways to go about it. And Panama, we did look into that for a while, but it just the protector was such a thing, like it just didn't work for our specific situation. So Cayman seems to be quite good for what we're trying to set up here. And many other DAOs are also going this route.
Yeah, I feel like we're at least in good company.
Yeah, the emphasis from legal was, we don't need to do anything super groundbreaking here. Aavegotchi as a project is groundbreaking, but there are plenty of other precedents of other DAOs moving kind of in the same way. So the emphasis was like not sticking our neck out of the pack too much to do something totally crazy. And so this is kind of where that proposal is, in the spirit of that, is here's what everyone's doing. We're pretty much going to do that with maybe a small twist here or there in the Constitution, for example. But yeah, in general, we're sticking with the pack of what the general consensus seems to be.
Good question from Chonya. Yeah, the initial push for DTF, and we did get so many, quite a few, not quite enough, but quite a few to docs for the DTF. You would be basically ready to go, right? So you're kind of pre-qualified, sir.
Yeah, and we're planning to make a forum post and a SIGPROP probably tomorrow. The forum post will go up by tomorrow, and then a sig prop. The sig prop will not have the names yet. That'll be the final core prop. Sig prop will just really be whether or not we want to pursue this as a DAO, and then the final core prop will come with all the names. That could come as early as next week. If the community, if you guys feel like this needs a lot more discussion, we don't have to be in a super hurry. But we did, like Jesse said, the legal did say we could probably have this confirmed by end of year if we move fairly quickly.
I I put together a feedback form here if you guys do want to fill it out and you are interested in expressing your interest in the Aavegotchi Foundation. It could be a good way to get some names in the hat, and you can just name, Discord handle, roles you're interested in, and perhaps any additional comments that you might want to put in there, and then we can also have a look at that next week.
I see a couple of references to moving to the Caymans. I don't think that's a requirement, but if you want to do that, you can do that either way, I think.
Sounds kind of nice.
Yeah. Great. So this link you just dropped, anyone that's interested in being a director or officer, you're saying they could go to Tally Forms?
Yep, so just click on this tally form. It says, what's your name? What's your Discord handle? What roles are you interested specifically, with the link to the Google Doc? And then are you willing to docs to Pixelcraft Aavegotchi DAO? And, yes or no, your core skill sets that would be helpful to your selected role, and then any additional comments that you might want to throw in there.
That's great. And yeah, I think if we keep the scope tight on this and we don't add extra baggage trying to figure out every other role or task force that goes with it, we can do that, I think, later. Then this can actually move as quick as we want it to, if we're all pretty comfortable and excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also agree with Mikey G's previous comment. If you don't live in the U.S., like I don't live in the U.S., I would have to probably, if I'm interested in this, I'll seek legal counsel in my area just to see if there's anything different I would have to do on my end here regarding like the S Corp or the other entity you mentioned.
Yeah, basically legal said if they didn't have an S Corp or weren't sure, like they could make introductions to, have an entity of your own in Cayman as well that signs on your behalf. It's all about liability and, you the person not signing, but your legal half. So that's more of a common sense thing. He was saying, that's totally up to each person, but why not? Like, just in general, actually, I remember him saying, just in general with Web3, like, you might be a member of multiple DAOs or doing many things. Why don't you have a, legal entity to handle all that? Much like so many independent developers, right? They have a company that is just a one-man show, but it helps with everything from tax write-offs to just being able to conduct a real business for any indie developer. So I think it's kind of the same model here. Questions, where the legal documents director's officer will be signing? Well, initially the officers would be signing formation documents, so getting it up and running, signing things with the lawyers, things with the Cayman government, stuff like that. And then I would imagine after that, it's really, like we say, the directors, for the most part, they may have an annual document to sign or something, but for the most part, they'd be managing the multi-sig. And the officers, like I say, the treasurer might be pretty busy just keeping the books balanced and all of that. Might want to even hire a part-time bookkeeper to help with that, but the treasurer would be managing that. And at the end of the year, you got to provide end of the financial year statements, P&L, stuff like that. The president and secretary, honestly, I'm not sure how busy they'll be. I guess the compensation part should be clear once we have a better sense of how much actual work there is. I don't think there'll be much. This is going to be a pretty static foundation, and most everything is running still through the DAO, and it's just like, hey guys, knock knock, directors sign this multi-sig 9 out of 10 times. But maybe there'll come a day where like the DAO wants to have in real life banking, right? God forbid we ever go back to the TradFi, but if we want to have like a bank account so that you guys could like, host an Amazon subscription or whatever other tooling you guys need from Web 2, you might need a bank account. And then this foundation makes that at least plausible. It could be possible. And so the director, the secretary, they would be maybe signing some docs to open up a bank account or things like that. T-Bird shouting out to Opolis. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about them. I believe they're really close, or some of their organizers are also with ETH Denver, if I remember right. Looks familiar.
Yeah, this
Cool,
was
guys. Well, any other questions? If no objections, I think we will go forward with a forum post, possible sig prop. See if we can get it all down on paper and go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. This has got me thinking about not only the DAO, but also how, as a person functioning in Web3, how I'd want to set up my own, legal structure. And maybe a lot of us have been thinking that. So, really, really great presentation. And I'll plug, oh yeah, you plugged the document there again. I will also drop the tally form here if you are interested in serving some sort of a one of these roles we talked about here today, or just general expressing your interest in this proposal. Please fill out that form, and we can glean it next week.
For compensation, I see Mikey J has a question. Would we decide compensation before electing these individuals? He presumes that would make sense. I totally get that. You would think that you'd want to know what the risks are and the rewards for signing up for this kind of gig. I mean, we can put that in the sig prop, but we would try to put numbers based on feedback. So over the next 48 hours, if people could simply, I don't know where best to do it, maybe it's the tally or here, but signal like, yes, I'm interested in being an officer, and I think fair compensation for being an officer would be this. Or
Yeah, feel free to suggest it in the doc.
yeah, comments.
Feel free to comment.
All we have to go off of is we asked what's kind of other industry standards, and the answer was, there's still price discovery on this, but they've seen things, anywhere between 5 and 10K annually for a multi-sig signer, and obviously an officer, it's a little bit different. It'd obviously be more, but I don't know how much more. Like we say, it's not supposed to be like a 40-hour-a-week job by any means, but there is some responsibility there.
Yeah, right on. That's awesome. Okay,
Mark it up. Leave comments.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to seeing this progress. I think this is a great first step forward. So that's awesome, and appreciate you coming up here and sharing that on Sunday, Jesse. That's awesome. I see Dr. Wagme. If we can move on to the, we might have a little time here. If Coda Dan, I don't know if you want to stick around. Dr. Wagme wants to talk about Pawn protocol and potential DAO proposal to provide Ghost for community borrowing with their gotchis.
I was hoping we would. Is there anything to discuss about the mission statement, or basically you have the latest tally, and then people can just answer that, and the working group will continue?
Yeah, my only update for this week for the mission statement is we do have a working group. If you do want to be involved, I know Dr. Wagme expressed interest, but anybody else interested in being more involved with actually developing the final statement and getting that out to the DAO is welcome to join. Just DM me on Discord. My DMs are open. And otherwise, we do have I just wanted to finalize some of the questions that we're going to be including on our survey for people to fill out. and just I'll plug that here. And that's simply a you just check off the ones that you would like to see included.
Cool. Yeah. I can stick around for about another 15 minutes here.
Okay, cool. Dr. Wagme, get you up here. GM.
Hey guys. Mostly wanted to kind of give an update. I know we've had Pon around a couple times, but two fun things happening in the community. So Pon is partnering with Orium to kind of help have a better experience with like if you take a loan against your gotchi, like how is it going to be pet? How do I get my rarity farming rewards? Things like that. And then also the Gotchi Vault met with them last week, met with Pon to talk about how the Gotchi Vault, you could use Vault Gotchis to borrow against them. And Bearded's working hard on kind of the technical aspect of how to make that happen, which means a lot of our gotchis are going to be able to take advantage of such a lending protocol. And there's a couple of things we need to think together as a community. Like first off, is the DAO interested in providing some ghost that the community could borrow against their gotchi? And there's a couple fun benefits from this, right? The DAO could grow its ghost stores as we talk about how to be sustainable as a DAO. If there's a, if the community is paying 4% interest to borrow ghost, even if ghost goes down, at least the community is, or the DAO is growing its ghost. It also kind of adds some nice utility to gotchis that you can take a loan against them that provides liquidity to the community. Could be a fun way to like partner that liquidity with the Alchemica that you're channeling, and generally more liquidity in our ecosystem like can be a good thing. Some cons to it, you can imagine that if some community members probably aren't going to pay back their loan, or because they have kind of like term limits, like if it's 90 days, you need to pay back, and then the DAO is going to end up liquidating their gotchi. And so are we comfortable with the DAO kind of acquiring gotchis for cheap from the community for people that didn't follow through on their loan? And then secondly, it's a potential way for people to borrow Ghost and then sell it as a way of shorting Ghost. Would be, I think, the two biggest cons. But my personal opinion is I think the pros outweigh the cons, that we can grow our treasury, provide liquidity to our community, and then provide additional utility to the gotchis. So if we did go forward, we need to figure out kind of a good loan to value ratio. How much would we want people to be able to borrow? What a good loan duration would be. And yeah, I think those are the two big things. And that what they've done previously for other projects is like a 4% interest rate, 90-day ratio, and 90-day term limit. And then I think my suggestion for LTV would be like 25% with a base value of around 100 ghost. Sorry, base value of 400 ghosts. So you could borrow 100 ghosts against each of your gotchis for 90 days and pay 4% interest on it. But I kind of wanted to hear from you guys if you'd be interested in that, if you think this is a bad idea for the DAO, or this could be kind of a win-win for everybody.
Have their contracts been fully audited, or have they been live for a while, battle tested?
I know they've been around for a fair bit, but I don't know to what scale. And that's not my area of expertise, but I think we could kind of look into that. They're a pretty strong project. Bearded met with them, and they really have pretty good like infrastructure, and the tech lead like knew what he was talking about. But I don't know, what does a good audit look like to you, or what would make you feel more comfortable about this?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a great audit anymore in crypto.
Right.
But having at least if they had links to audits would be great. Just if they have had any, like we had the Ghost staking contract was audited by QuantStamp back in the day. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything, but it is nice to even put in the effort as a completely new product.
Yep, I'll put in the link to their audit report here in a second. What's your thought on the DAO essentially liquidating community members that don't pay their loan?
Hmm. I mean, does it have to come from the DAO? Why does it have to? Why couldn't individual community members also do this? Why does the DAO have to be the one I guess that would add first of all, who would be liquidating? Is how would the DAO do that transaction? Can anyone liquidate like Aave, or like how would that process work out? And also, could an individual just if 100K, could they be the ones to bankroll this? Does it have to be the DAO?
Yeah, so as Bearded said, the lender liquidates. I think there could be individual lenders also. I think that's an option. The whole goal is kind of like for a peer-to-peer setup so that anyone with Ghost could come in and do that.
Sounds like I'm offering.
They do have multiple options for just peer-to-peer lending without, they have DAO options that Dr. Wagner is discussing here, but also anybody in Aavegotchi right now can go to the Palm protocol and bundle assets or list an asset. It's almost like a marketplace, and then you can have lenders looking for maybe Aavegotchis that they would potentially want at that liquidation, if they were to get liquidated, and then create the loan based on the perceived value of the gotchi that's being put up there. There'd be no determined LTV or fixed value of the gotchi. It would simply be a lender going out to the market looking for an APY. They find a gotchi that they think is worth significantly more than what they're lending out, and they would be okay in the insolvent or scenario where the lender does not pay it back. They would be okay owning the asset. So they do already have a marketplace for peer-to-peer, but I think what Dr. Wagme is also proposing is some of their DAO related kind of options that they put out there. They shared some slides here. I can grab those.
Well, basically the DAO would be providing Ghost and then earning interest on it. It's a way for the DAO to earn using its assets that are sitting there as a bond, essentially, while also providing
Personally, I don't
value
think
to our gotchas.
we don't really need for the DAO to do that. I mean, if it's just 100K ghosts, there's plenty of ghosts out there that could do that. It doesn't have to really go through the DAO. Is my initial impression. Good, individuals could do this.
Because I'm pessimistic that individuals are going to do it, and I think it's also a way for the DAO to earn yield on its Ghost that's just sitting there.
Yeah, so
just a couple, No Futuristic was talking a little bit about how the lending was infeasible from Orium perspective. I don't know where Orium's at with their lending stuff, but you would have, for Vault gotchis, for example, you would have full function of all of the lending and everything that you can do with the Vault currently. This was one of the big cons previously, is how are we going to get pet? How can I channel? How can I do all the things that I'm currently doing with my gotchi? And that didn't seem feasible, but that will all be doable with Vault assets, at least, and probably Orium is not too far behind.
Hey, I just stepped up here real quick. Just from my conversations with them, it was more of a technical issue. Their pawn safe, what they do with the pawn safe is they basically block any transfer functions. So gotchi lending is based on the ability to safely transfer and get it back. So for them, they were stating that that transfer function, like for Gotchi lending, if you put it into the pawn safe because it's custodial, you won't be able to lend because it will block the Aavegotchi diamond contracts transfer functions for the lending. I don't know if that's changed,
Yep,
but
and the vault solves that by basically you'll get a receipt token when you deposit your Gotchi in the vault, and then you would use that receipt token for to interact with their protocol. So you're not using the actual Gotchi itself, right? Just the receipt token that's used to withdraw the Gotchi.
okay, then my question would be, with the receipt, if you were liquidated, what would be the process to get the Gotchi back from via the receipt token?
Well, you've lost your Gotchi, right?
Well, when you're depositing the receipt token, correct?
So if you get liquidated, you lose your receipt token to the lender, so that would go like to the DAO, right? And
But
or it would go to
wouldn't it be in the vault?
Yeah, what I'm asking is about the transfer of the Gotchi. How does that happen?
I don't understand the question. Like you would just you get the receipt for the Gotchi that's in the vault,
Sorry,
and then you would be able to withdraw your Gotchi from the vault.
sorry, let me clarify. What I mean is, if I'm in the Gotchi vault, or I guess what if I'm not in the Gotchi vault? Does this use case still work, or just for the Gotchi vault?
So only the Gotchi vault currently has the infrastructure for you to get full utility from your Gotchi.
Okay, so that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense then, because in your system, you would automatically transfer the Gotchi via the receipt token if a liquidation happened. Where if you're not in the Gotchi vault, you wouldn't be able to do the lending. It would only be through the Gotchi vault at this point.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, we can Pawn has been great to work with. I think that it offers a lot of benefits like to our DAO, to our native protocol assets. And I'm interested in seeing where votes would lie for it, but I'll put up a formal discussion on the DAO forum. Please give feedback there and look for a SIG prop coming over the next week or two.
How much is needed to kickstart this?
I think it could make sense to start smaller, see if there is demand at all. I don't know if I would want to lock up a big amount of Ghost if there's not going to be much utilization to it. But I don't know.
I mean, it just seems like
100K Ghost or something.
couldn't we just bankroll this as individuals and see how it goes before going to the DAO and asking? It seems like you might as well try it first as individuals, and then if there's a need for deeper liquidity, then you would go to the DAO. But like asking the DAO for funds first, just doesn't really. No one has liquid Ghost these days.
We are
And it's going to happen regardless, right? Like we're working to like bring this utility to Aavegotchi's like with the vault, and so there will be that peer-to-peer option kind of regardless of our conversation here. This is just about if the DAO wants to use its Ghost as a tool.
Yeah, and I mean, Palm
mean-
Protocol has many use cases. This is the DAO use case is one of the use cases. There are individual use cases. There's also the Pawn Safe, which we're probably going to experiment with that on a small scale with GMI, and do some of the community related things like you were saying, Coder Dan. I'm going to show my podcast one more time here. If you do want to catch up on everything we're talking about here with Pawn, I actually do go over all their kind of use cases that they have currently, including the DAO use case. And so if you'd like to get caught up on that, there's that for you.
Yeah, I would love to see individuals doing this first and then proving it before going to the DAO and asking for 50 or 100K. Just seems like if we're gonna have to liquidate, the DAO is gonna have to liquidate people. Like, who's gonna do that? The multi-sig gonna have to do that every time. Seems like there'd be a lot of transactions and things on the DAO side. That's better suited for individuals. The new board.
This has been a great meeting. Very productive. Appreciate you guys coming up here and sharing the legal structure stuff. And looking forward to seeing who's expressing their interest in that. We'll also drop these forms here one more time just for you to check it out. Survey selection form right here. Please provide your input on our mission and vision development. This is a DAO-led initiative, so we don't want a small group of people making these decisions. So just look at the questions you think are most relevant. Please check them off. And we're getting pretty close here to having like a proper survey out to you guys, and then actually constructing some actual real mission and vision documents. There's also the expression of interest form, and this is for the legal structure that we just discussed. So please have a look there. And if you are interested in getting involved in the Aavegotchi DAO Foundation, please fill that form out, and I think that'll be really helpful. So that's all I got for this meeting here. Now, I know Futuristic and I have been kicking off the Gotchi spaces again. We've been doing it kind of midweek and experimenting with the times, hoping maybe to do another one on Wednesday or something like that, so we can continue discussing a lot of the stuff we discussed here today.
Yeah, we were discussing internally, like having a set Twitter Spaces for Gotchi Gang. You guys are already doing it, so Hefe, you should like talk to Gravy, and you guys can maybe sync on some times when we could do like an official Twitter Spaces together.
Yeah, we want to optimize. So if we can work with you guys on that, we should definitely do that. I think it'd be really valuable.
Yeah, we need to get out into Twitter a little bit more. We have such great Saturday hangouts, and then we need some midweek action. Would be nice during the US
Absolutely.
time, maybe.
Yeah, you guys do some great stuff on Twitter Spaces midweek anyway when we do our big launches, so we'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah.
That's all I got, guys, for this Sunday. Coder Dan, anybody else up here? You guys got anything else to leave our audience off with here today?
Mikey J was just asking about the rarity farming core prop. I guess that will be up for discussion next week.
Yeah, I thought we
About the
determined
funds.
last week that wasn't a the proposal up there wasn't really appropriately framed. So I think we should definitely have a proper discussion around it before we put a sig prop or anything out there.
Well, it was, the main question was just source of funds and then the timing of it.
Yeah, I'll note that down, and we'll discuss that next week. Sounds good. Oh yeah, also A to Z every Tuesday evening. That's Zombie Shepherd's channel. Check it out. That's another GMI podcast that we've been doing. Some great discussion going on there. So Zombie Shepherd, you got a link or something you can drop and a time so these folks can join you? A lot going on right now in Gotcha Gang, and it's really nice to see us just keep moving forward during all the craziness that's happening. We've been shielded from that almost.
Yep. Pretty nice.
Comfy.
No FTX.
Maybe we should do another pumpkin smashing event where you have Sam Bankman-Fried heads and then Alchemica shoots out or something. Yeah, awesome. All right, appreciate you guys. If we have nothing else,
Well, friends,
yeah.
make sure you go out and vote if you haven't already. Get that XP. Yeah, Yannick, I love that meme. That's everyone.
Oh my god, I gotta share this before we go. This was somebody did a great like office thing with FTX. I retweeted.
Oh god, yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that?
It's happening.
I'm gonna share it.
Perfect.
You guys should check that out. Here you go. Okay, so we'll see you all either midweek or we'll see you again on Friday for our GMI programming kicking off the week next week.
All right, friends, have a lovely Sunday.
Later, friends.
Peace.
Peace.